This episode is brought to you by HP Plus. In a world full of smart devices, isn't it about time your printer got smart too? Now printing is smart with HP Plus, and the HP Smart app is how it all happens. You can print from your phone with just a tap, no matter where you are, even from your garage/home office/yoga studio. Huh, that is smart. HP Plus. Learn more about smart printing at hp.com/smart.
This episode is brought to you by Disney Plus. Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN Plus. Stream all your favorites with the Disney Bundle. Disney Plus has Loki and Luca. On Hulu, watch originals like American Horror Story and 9 Perfect Strangers. And ESPN Plus has every match of Spain's thrilling La Liga. Get the Disney Bundle today for only $13.99. Includes Hulu ad-supported plan. Access content from each service separately. Terms apply. See thedisneybundle.com for details.
Final hour. All our bets are coming up for tonight with the Bucs and the Cowboys, game 1 of the NFL season. Side total props all coming your way to end the show. But right now, as promised, we welcome in, for the first time this NFL season, which is really awesome, great to hear his voice again, our pal, pro sports bettor, Rob Pizzola. Rob is one of the big boys in the space, so when Rob speaks, you should be listening, taking notes as Rob is giving you bets for week number 1 in the National Football League. Rob is the co-host of the Circles Off podcast, which you should check out. He is involved with the app BetStamp, which you should check out. That is BetStamp. He's got a Sunday morning NFL Periscope on his Twitter account at Rob Pizzola. Rob joins us now on You Better You Bet. Rob, welcome back to the show. Nick and Ken, BetQL Thursday. Happy and merry week 1 to you and yours.
Yeah, same to you guys. It's been too long. Good to be back.
Rob, obviously, in your traditional season-long hits that you did with us the last couple of years, we go over as many games as possible. And we'll try to do the same thing here. I know you have a lot of thoughts on a lot of the bigger games, but I think we have to start with Baltimore. And, I know that you saw the news with Marcus Peters, who Adam Schefter's confirming suffered a torn ACL, that's the fear. So it's Marcus Peters and Gus Edwards probably both out for the season if that's true. But, in terms of looking at the Ravens, like big picture as a whole, the win total market's still up 10.5, 11, depending on where you look. Obviously, like co-favorite basically to win the AFC North with the Cleveland Browns. How has what has happened sort of in totality with Dobbins and now obviously Edwards and Justice Hill and now Marcus Peters potentially all being out for the season? How do you view Baltimore kind of as a team going into the 17-game regular season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it obviously has an impact. The Peters injury, I think, is huge. And running backs, I heard the intro with Nick talking about the running back situation. I'm not here to crap on Baltimore's running backs, but they're a lot more replaceable than a top cornerback, especially this day and age in the NFL. So the Peters injury is absolutely monumental. You think of who they're playing next week, the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes there as well. So early on in the season, especially the first 4 weeks, their schedule is difficult. You could see Baltimore potentially get off to a start, which we're not accustomed to seeing that team get out to. And I had Baltimore and Cleveland kind of neck and neck. In fact, in my season simulations, I had Baltimore 0.1 wins better than Cleveland. I imagine when I run things again, I'll actually have Cleveland leapfrog them in the AFC North. So it does have a varying impact. And I don't want to say Baltimore is no longer a Super Bowl contender, but it just makes it that much more difficult when you lose a top corner in this day and age.
There's absolutely no question about it. Again, if you missed it, Marcus Peters and Gus Edwards, this is like something made up, like something out of a nightmare for the Ravens. Back-to-back plays in practice, torn ACLs apparently for Gus Edwards and for Marcus Peters. All right, Rob, let's turn our attention to week number 1. We will get to tonight's game as we end the interview with your Dallas Cowboys taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and your old pal Tom Brady. But let's talk about Sunday's games first. And let's begin in Western New York, where the Bills 6.5-point favorites over Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Total, Rob, 48.5.
As of now, I don't really like this game all that much. Now, I will say this. I'm really monitoring this TJ Watt status, because if TJ Watt does not suit up in game 1, they have Stephon Tuitt on IR. They lost Bud Dupree to Tennessee in free agency. I don't know how the Steelers defense gets any pressure on Josh Allen. And I know that they were able to hold the Bills to, I think, 19 points on offense back in December when they last played, because the Bills had a pick 6 in that game. So potentially there's some optimism about them being able to do that again. I just don't see that if they can't generate any pressure whatsoever, especially with the amount that we know that Buffalo is going to pass this season, because that's Brian Daboll's MO. And then you look on the other side of the ball, the Steelers lost 4 offensive linemen in the offseason. I mean, they're starting rookies at left tackle and center. Zach Banner's hurt. I think people just think all of a sudden they're going to come in and be able to run the ball all over Buffalo because they drafted Najee Harris. And I don't see that. I talked about this with the Bills last season, but I think the Bills' run defense is very underrated. They kind of forced opponents to run into them a little bit more than they wanted to, or it was like a strategic game plan for them. They just didn't want the teams to pass against them. But this Pittsburgh offense, it seems like it's such an easy offense to game plan against. That offensive line is not going to be able to hold up. You play them again, press them against the line of scrimmage, stop the run. I just don't see a lot of paths to success for the Steelers offense. And I know Big Ben looked good in preseason, but I'm not going to put a whole lot of stock in the preseason. So I'm personally waiting here on the TJ Watt status. I have all sorts of alerts set for if he manages to hold out or if he signs a contract or whatever. But subjectively speaking, I really like the matchup for the Bills. And I think this is blowout potential.
Okay, so that's Pittsburgh and Buffalo, and I know Nick feels that way. I'm going to be like the only person that bet the Steelers apparently, and I'm going to feel awesome when they're down like 31-0 in the second half of this game probably. Rob,
too.
another game that I Nick will feel amazing as well, and then he'll tell me about it on Monday. Another game, Rob, obviously that we want your thoughts on. Browns Chiefs, probably the game of the week, definitely like the game of Sunday, depending on how you feel about Tampa and Dallas and some of the other games that we have. Chiefs 6.5, 54.5. I think the interesting thing here is the steam on the over, right? And the fact it's the highest total on the board by a lot. Do you project that level of scoring in this rematch from the playoffs?
So totals are very, very tricky early on in the year. And one of the reasons that, especially this year, I'm having trouble is because of the scoring environment in the NFL last year. There was an average of 49.6 points per game in the NFL last year. That was up 4 points from the previous year. It was 2.4 points higher than any other season in NFL history. So to me, if the scoring environment stays the same this season, then yes, I have no problem with this number, 54.5. I actually think it might still be a little bit low with both of these offenses. But if we start to see a reversion back to previous years because we have some more crowd noise again and potential game gets just called differently, maybe offensive holding penalties get called again this season, then we're looking at a really high number. And it's very difficult to make that judgment in week one when we haven't seen anything. But I don't mind the Steve on the over here. I personally think these are some great matchups. And I know Cleveland upgraded the defense this year, and I like what they did with their secondary in the offseason. But personally, I just think the Chiefs offense is so scary going into this year. You look at Patrick Mahomes last season, he had a 323 EPA per play, and that was with a makeshift offensive line. They had a lot of offensive line injuries throughout the season. They've upgraded the offensive line. They've addressed that area of weakness that killed them in the Super Bowl. So I think KC scores at will. And I think the Cleveland offense really comes into this season underrated as well because their EPA per play last season was just 10th in the league. They played 3 games in a monsoon. They played 1 game without any wide receivers. They have a ton of great weapons. I expect them to be a top 5 EPA per play offense this year. So I think you see a lot of scoring in this game. I'm not in love with the side. I completely understand the move on the total. Again, if we see the same scoring environment as last year, I think that both teams score into the 30s in this game. And I think this ends up being one of those we look back on and say, well, this was a really obvious over.
You bet BetQL. Thursday, Nick Costos, Ken Barkley chatting NFL Week 1 with the great Rob Bizzola on Twitter at Rob Bizzola of BetStamp and the Circles Off podcast. Rob, let's go to Foxborough, where the New England Patriots, at Bet Rivers at least, out to a 3.5-point favorite over Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins. So Patriots-Dolphins total 43.5. This is a game that Ken and I have talked a lot about in the offseason leading up to Week 1. What's your take here?
I hate that this moved. So this is one that I should have personally just played when New England was -3 plus 100. And I was kind of just waiting there, hoping that potentially some Miami money would come in. I like this matchup for New England. I don't know what Mac Jones is going to be, but Cam Newton threw 8 touchdown passes in 15 games last year. It's very difficult to get much worse than that. And Tua, yes, looked great in the preseason. If I had a nickel for every quarterback that looked great in the preseason that didn't do anything in the regular season, I'd be rich by now because it happens every single year. And I just can't ignore the fact that Tua was not good last year. 28th out of 33 quarterbacks in terms of EPA per play of quarterbacks that played at least 300 snaps last season. He just wasn't very good. And one thing that we can almost always count on is Bill Belichick against young quarterbacks. And I know it's like this narrative-y thing, and it maybe gets a little bit overstated, but you look at quarterbacks in their first and second year in the NFL going up against Belichick, and they very rarely win those games. And I thought this 3 was probably a little bit short. 3.5 is fine now, and it's kind of just settled to where I thought it would settle. And or was, my actual numbers dictate where this game should be. And it's just kind of unfortunate because I did want a piece of the Patriots this week, and I'm just not willing to do it at 3.5.
Rob, another game that we haven't spent a ton of time on, but I think is fascinating. Nick and I spent some time on it a long time ago because I think we both like Arizona to win the game outright a little bit, is this Arizona-Tennessee game. Some kind of interesting side movement. I feel like we're about to come off the 3 in a bunch of places. I know it's some off-screen apps. It's actually 2.5 minus 15 on Tennessee right now. So that's kind of interesting, right? That we might be come off the key number of 3 towards Arizona. Total about 52. What can you tell us about Arizona-Tennessee and your expectations for this game?
I'm with you guys. I like Arizona, and I'm actually still looking at the over in this game as well. So this could be one where I play the Cardinals and the over. I'm already in on the Cardinals. I do think this probably closes at 3. I do think if we get down to 2.5, there's some buyback on Tennessee. But to me, I break down this game, and I just don't see much separating the two teams. A lot of people focusing on the Arizona cornerback situation right now because they're going to go up against Julio Jones and probably A.J. Brown as well, even though he didn't practice yesterday and was limited today or whatever. But, I mean, you look at the other side of the ball as well. I just see matchup advantages all over the field for the Arizona Cardinals. And I think the loss of Arthur Smith could potentially affect the Tennessee offense more than people are talking about. Like, he did wonders with Ryan Tannehill with that play calling. I'm not sure that offense puts up the same EPA as they have in previous years. And this Tennessee defense is going to be bad. I just don't see where they have a matchup advantage. Janoris Jenkins starting at cornerback, he's kind of fallen off a cliff. Christian Fulton's going to have a better season than he did in his rookie year. And that depth at wide receiver for the Cardinals is just too much. And then one thing that really caught me off, in the offseason, I was doing a lot of reading about Tennessee, and they stunk on third down on defense last year. And they attributed a lot of that to the fact that they were playing looser coverages, a lot of zone on third down. They're going to play a lot of tight man coverages on third down this year. I think that's a horrible strategy against Arizona, especially with the wide receivers that they have. But also turning your back to Kyler Murray to chase wide receivers all over the field seems like a negative EV outcome. And so just for those reasons alone, I'm always scared of Cliff Kingsbury. That's always a factor for Arizona. But I made this game much closer to a pick'em. So as long as 3's on the board, I'll bet it. And then this total, as long as A.J. Brown is in there, I think both teams are scoring as well. So 52.5 right now. It's tricky because of the scoring environment, like I said, but I also lean heavily to the over there.
Rob, we have a little over a minute to go here. Definitely want to get your thoughts on your favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys. Over at Bet Rivers, this number is now up to 9. So Tampa -9 over Dallas, total of 52. I don't know if you've got bets on this game already, if you like it at the current number, but what do you make of tonight? Tampa and Dallas again, Tampa -9, total 52, the current number.
We have a couple traditions in the Pizzola household. One is to lose money regularly betting against Tom Brady for like the last decade. And the other is to lose money betting on the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm going to put both of those into effect tonight because I just bet Dallas about literally an hour ago at +9.5. I don't mind it at +9. I also have a ticket on the over in this game. I see this as being a high-scoring game. I think Dallas's offense is going to be really good this year. And yes, the Zach Martin injury is something that we have to account for in this game. But we look at what Dallas did offensively with Dak Prescott last year, and they moved the ball pretty consistently and on some very good defenses as well. So I see this as being a high-scoring affair. I don't think the Dallas defense does much to stop Tom Brady. But with an offense like this, getting 9 points, that opens up a lot of backdoor potential, a lot of situations that could work to your advantage. I think the Cowboys will be competitive in this game. So I do like the +9, and I like the over 52 as well.
Rob, it might not work out tonight for the Cowboys, but you'll always have Italy this past summer in the Euros. Rob is the absolute best in the business. Rob is on Twitter at Rob Bizzola. Rob's podcast is Circles Off, and the app that Rob is affiliated with, which you should check out, is BetStamp, and their Twitter account is at BetStamp. Rob, good luck tonight. Good luck this weekend. We look forward to talking to you every Thursday here on You Better You Bet. We're pumped to have you on a weekly basis.
All right. Good luck to you guys as well.
The great Rob Bizzola joining us here on You Better You Bet. That was awesome. Lot to chew
Thanks,
on
Dallas.
there from Rob.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. We'll tell you what we like in Tampa and Dallas in the Power Hour. But coming up next, an NFL Week 1 edition, Futures edition, whatever you prefer.